Vincent Taylor's heart races as the shuttle door hisses open, revealing the alien landscape of Betazoid Prime. The human diplomat steps onto the platform, his eyes immediately drawn to the striking figure awaiting him. Estelle, a Betazoid female of breathtaking beauty, stands before him, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Welcome to our world, Mr. Taylor," Estelle greets him, her melodious voice carrying a hint of tension. As their eyes meet, Vincent feels a surge of attraction so powerful, it nearly overwhelms him. Unbeknownst to him, Estelle's telepathic abilities pick up on his primal desires, causing her to recoil slightly. Vincent, oblivious to her reaction's true nature, straightens his uniform and extends a hand. "Thank you for the warm welcome, Estelle. I look forward to our negotiations." Estelle hesitates before accepting his handshake, her fingers trembling as they make contact. The touch sends a jolt through both of them, intensifying the already palpable sexual tension. Vincent struggles to maintain his composure, acutely aware of his body's response to Estelle's presence. As they walk towards the negotiation chambers, Vincent's mind races. Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation hangs in the balance, dependent on his ability to navigate these crucial talks. Yet he finds himself distracted by Estelle's alluring presence, her every movement captivating his attention. Estelle, for her part, battles her own internal conflict. Her society's taboo against physical intimacy with non-telepathic species clashes violently with the raw, primal desires she senses emanating from Vincent. Never before has she encountered such intense, unfiltered sexual attraction. It both repulses and intrigues her, challenging everything she's known about mating and relationships. The Betazoid liaison steals glances at Vincent as they walk, her eyes drawn to the unfamiliar bulge in his lower body. The human's physiology, so different from her own people's, becomes a source of fascination and fear. What is that thing between his legs? Why does it fill her with such conflicting emotions? Vincent notices Estelle's furtive looks and misinterprets them as interest. He clears his throat, attempting to break the tension. "I hope I'm not making you uncomfortable, Estelle. If there's anything I can do to make this process easier, please let me know." Estelle startles at his words, realizing she's been caught staring. "No, Mr. Taylor, it's just, your species is very different from ours. Your thoughts, your body, they're unlike anything I've experienced before." Vincent's eyebrows rise in surprise. "You can read my thoughts?" Estelle nods, her cheeks flushing a deep purple. "We Betazoids are telepathic. It's how we communicate, how we mate. Your mind is so open, so full of desire. It's overwhelming." The human diplomat feels a rush of embarrassment, realizing the full implications of her words. I apologize if my thoughts have offended you. I'll try to control them better." Estelle shakes her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's just it, Mr. Taylor. Part of me is scared of these new sensations, of the thing between your legs that causes such intense feelings. But another part wants to explore them further." As they reach the entrance to the negotiation chambers, both Vincent and Estelle pause, the weight of their situation settling upon them. The fate of Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation now rests not just on diplomatic skill, but on their ability to navigate this unexpected minefield of cultural differences and sexual tension. Vincent takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the challenges ahead. "Shall we begin the negotiations, Estelle?" Estelle nods, her eyes meeting his with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Yes, Mr. Taylor. Let's see where this leads us, both diplomatically and personally." With that, they step into the chambers, the door closing behind them with a soft click. The future of human-alien relations hangs in the balance, hinging on their ability to bridge the gap between their vastly different approaches to intimacy and understand the complex interplay of fear, desire, and cultural expectations that now define their relationship. The door to the negotiation chambers slides open, revealing a circular room dominated by a large polished table. 5 male Betazoid elders, their faces etched with wisdom and authority, rise to greet Vincent and Estelle. As they enter, Vincent feels a sudden wave of unease wash over him, noticing the elders' furrowed brows and tight-lipped expressions. Estelle leans close, her breath tickling his ear. They sense our tension, she whispers, her cheeks flushing purple once more. Try to focus on the task at hand. Vincent nods, swallowing hard as he approaches the table. He launches into his prepared speech, detailing Earth's technological advancements and cultural diversity. As he speaks, he becomes acutely aware of Estelle's presence beside him, her intoxicating scent filling his nostrils. His concentration wavers, and he stumbles over his words. Earth's propulsion technology has advanced to... Vincent pauses, his mind suddenly blank. He feels a bead of sweat trickle down his back. Just as he's about to continue, the chamber doors burst open. A uniformed Betazoid security officer rushes in, his face contorted with urgency. High Council, we have an emergency! The elders turn to face the newcomer, their expressions grave. Speak, Thuran, one of them commands. Thuran's words come out in a rush. A rogue faction has sabotaged our planetary defense systems. We're vulnerable to attack, and our long-range scanners have detected a Zorblaxian fleet approaching. The chamber erupts into chaos. The elders speak rapidly in their native tongue, their voices rising in alarm. Vincent catches Estelle's eye, seeing his own shock mirrored in her face. One of the elders turns to Vincent, his voice strained. Mr. Taylor, it seems we find ourselves in a precarious position. Your people's expertise in non-telepathic combat may be our only hope. Vincent's diplomatic training kicks in, pushing aside his personal distractions. He straightens his back and nods firmly. Earth stands ready to assist. We can coordinate a joint defense against the Zorblaxian invasion. The next hours pass in a blur of activity. Vincent and Estelle find themselves sequestered in a command center, poring over tactical data and defense plans. The proximity to Estelle both thrills and unnerves Vincent. He can feel the heat radiating from her body, smell the subtle floral scent of her hair. As Vincent outlines a strategy to repel the Zorblaxian attack, he notices Estelle watching him intently. Her dark eyes widen with each tactical insight he offers, and he can't help but feel a surge of pride. Your mind, it's so different from ours, Estelle says softly. The way you think, the strategies you devise. It's fascinating. Vincent allows himself a small smile. Different doesn't always mean inferior, does it? Estelle shakes her head, a look of wonder on her face. No, it certainly doesn't. Their moment of understanding is interrupted by a blaring alarm. A holographic display flickers to life, showing a swarm of Zorblaxian ships entering the atmosphere. We need to get to the secure bunker, Estelle says urgently, grabbing Vincent's arm. We can finalize the evacuation plans from there. They rush through winding corridors, the sound of distant explosions growing louder. The bunker door hisses shut behind them, plunging them into silence. In the dim light, Vincent becomes acutely aware of Estelle's rapid breathing, her chest rising and falling mere inches from him. Their eyes meet, and something electric passes between them. Before Vincent can think, Estelle's lips are on his, her kiss hungry and desperate. He responds with equal fervor, his hands tangling in her hair. Estelle breaks away first, her eyes wide with shock and something akin to wonder. That was... she stammers. A thunderous boom shakes the bunker, snapping them back to reality. They exchange a look of mingled guilt and longing before rushing to the command console. The battle rages above them, Earth's hastily summoned fleet engaging the Zorblaxian forces alongside what remains of Betazoid's defenses. Vincent's tactical acumen proves invaluable, his quick thinking turning the tide of several key engagements. But the Zorblaxians press on relentlessly. As the Betazoid capital sustains heavy damage, Vincent's mind races for a solution. His eyes fall on a schematic of the Zorblaxian command ship, and an idea forms. We need to take out their command ship, he says, turning to Estelle. If we can infiltrate it and disable their weapon systems, we might have a chance. Estelle's face pales, but she nods resolutely. I'll go with you. My telepathy can help us avoid detection. As they prepare for the perilous mission, Vincent finds himself studying Estelle's face, memorizing every detail. The curve of her cheek, the determined set of her jaw, the depth of her dark eyes. He wonders if he'll ever see her again after this. They board a stealth shuttle, the cramped space forcing them close together. As the shuttle's engines hum to life, Vincent feels Estelle's hand slip into his. He gives it a gentle squeeze, words unnecessary between them. The shuttle bay doors open, revealing the chaos of the battle raging above Betazoid Prime. Zorblaxian fighters streak past, energy weapons painting the sky with deadly light. Vincent takes a deep breath, his grip on Estelle's hand tightening. "Ready?" he asks, his voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. Estelle nods, her eyes meeting his with a mix of fear and willpower. "Ready." With that, their shuttle shoots forward, plunging into the heart of the battle. As they weave through the maelstrom of fire and debris, Vincent can't help but think that the fate of two worlds, and whatever this is between him and Estelle, now hangs in the balance. Balance. The shuttle streaks towards the massive Zorblaxian command ship, its sleek form dwarfed by the alien vessel's colossal bulk. "There," Vincent whispers, pointing to a small opening in the ship's hull. "That looks like a maintenance hatch." Estelle nods, her eyes closed in concentration. "I sense no Zorblaxians nearby. It should be safe to dock." With expert precision, Vincent guides the shuttle into the narrow opening. The craft shudders as it makes contact, magnetic clamps engaging to secure it in place. For a moment, they sit in silence, the gravity of their mission settling over them. "Ready?" Vincent asks again, his voice barely audible. Estelle takes a deep breath, her dark eyes meeting his. "As I'll ever be." They exit the shuttle, immediately ducking into a nearby air duct. The confined space forces them to crawl on their hands and knees, their bodies pressed close together. Vincent feels the heat radiating from Estelle's form, her scent filling his nostrils. He struggles to focus on the task at hand, acutely aware of every brush of her body against his. Estelle leads the way, her telepathic abilities guiding them through the labyrinthine passages. "2 guards ahead," she whispers, pressing herself against the duct wall to allow Vincent to pass. As they emerge from the duct, Vincent springs into action. His fist connects with the first guard's jaw, sending the alien sprawling. The second guard reaches for his weapon, but Estelle is quicker. She grabs the Zorblaxian's arm, twisting it behind his back with surprising strength. Vincent blinks in surprise. "Where did you learn that?" Estelle shrugs, a small smile playing on her lips. "I may be a diplomat, but I'm not helpless." They make their way through the ship's corridors, avoiding patrols with the help of Estelle's telepathy. As they near the main control room, the tension between them grows palpable. Vincent finds himself stealing glances at Estelle, admiring her perseverance and grace under pressure. The control room door looms before them, guarded by a squad of heavily armed Zorblaxians. Vincent exchanges a look with Estelle, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they launch into action. Vincent charges forward, using his superior strength to barrel into the first 2 guards. Estelle follows close behind, her movements fluid and precise as she disarms a 3rd guard. The room erupts into chaos as alarms blare and energy weapons discharge. Ducking behind a console, Vincent finds himself back-to-back with Estelle. He feels her ragged breathing, the trembling of her body against his. For a moment, the battle fades away, and all he can focus on is the warmth of her presence. "Vincent!" Estelle's shout snaps him back to reality. He rolls to the side just as a Zorblaxian energy blast scorches the floor where he'd been standing. With a final burst of effort, they subdue the remaining guards. Vincent rushes to the main control panel, his fingers flying over the alien interface as he works to disable the weapon systems. Estelle stands watch, her eyes darting between the door and the various screens around the room. Suddenly, her gaze locks onto a particular display. "Vincent," she calls, her voice tight with urgency. "Look at this." He joins her, studying the screen. Complex data streams scroll past, but one word catches his attention: shadowers. "What are the shadowers?" he asks, frowning. Estelle's face pales. "I'm not sure, but it seems the Zorblaxians are being manipulated by this group. They're not acting independently." Before Vincent can respond, a loud hiss fills the room. A sickly sweet odor permeates the air, and he feels his limbs growing heavy. "Gas!" he shouts, grabbing Estelle's hand. "We need to get out of here." They stumble towards the door, their vision blurring. Vincent spots an escape pod nearby and drags Estelle towards it. They tumble inside, the door sealing shut behind them. In the confined space of the pod, their bodies press together. Vincent becomes acutely aware of Estelle's rapid heartbeat, the softness of her skin against his. Their eyes meet, and for a moment the chaos outside fades away. "Vincent," Estelle whispers, her voice trembling. I'm scared. Your body, your mind, they're so alien to me. But at the same time, I've never felt this way before. Your bravery, your intelligence, they fascinate me." Vincent swallows hard, his hand unconsciously moving to cup her cheek. "Estelle, I respect you more than anyone I've ever met. Your abilities, your strength, you're incredible. I want to bridge the gap between us, between our species." Their lips meet in a passionate kiss, more intense than their previous encounter. Vincent loses himself in the sensation, the softness of her lips, the taste of her. A violent jolt tears them apart. Warning lights flash as the escape pod ejects from the Zorblaxian ship. They're hurtling through space, the vast emptiness stretching out before them. Estelle's eyes widen in panic. "The life support systems, they're damaged!" Vincent springs into action, his mind racing as he assesses their situation. The pod's oxygen levels are dropping rapidly, and Estelle's telepathic abilities begin to falter under the stress. As they work frantically to repair the pod and signal for help, Vincent can't help but marvel at how seamlessly they've come to work together. Estelle's initial hesitation about physical contact seems forgotten as she reaches past him to adjust a control panel, her body pressing against his. Through the pod's viewport, they watch in horror as the Betazoid homeworld comes under heavy fire from the Zorblaxian fleet. The planet's defenses crumble under the onslaught, and Vincent feels a surge of helplessness. Suddenly, a massive energy surge erupts from the Zorblaxian command ship. The entire fleet seems to shudder, their weapons falling silent. Vincent's sabotage has worked, giving the Betazoids and their human allies the upper hand. But before they can celebrate, a new threat emerges. The pod lurches violently, caught in the gravitational pull of a nearby moon. "We're going to crash!" Estelle cries, her fingers digging into Vincent's arm. As they hurtle towards the moon's surface, Vincent's mind races through their options. Attempt a risky landing in the damaged pod, or abandon it and take their chances in the harsh lunar environment. With only seconds to decide, Vincent looks at Estelle. In her eyes, he sees fear, trust, and something else. Something that makes his heart race despite the danger. "Whatever happens," he says, pulling her close, "we face it together." The pod enters the moon's atmosphere, shaking violently as the hull heats up. Vincent and Estelle cling to each other, bracing for impact. As the surface rushes up to meet them, Vincent's last thought is of the mysteries they've uncovered. The shadowers, the future of human Betazoid relations, and the depth of his feelings for Estelle. The pod hits the ground with a deafening crash, and everything goes dark. Black. Vincent's eyes snapped open, his head throbbing. The acrid smell of burning circuitry filled his nostrils as he struggled to orient himself. Beside him, Estelle stirred, a groan escaping her lips. "Estelle," he croaked, reaching out to touch her arm. "Are you all right?" She blinked, her dark eyes focusing on his face. I think so. What happened?" The events of the past few hours came rushing back. Their daring escape from the Zorblaxian command ship, the revelation about the Shadowers, and their desperate flight in the escape pod. Vincent glanced around, taking in the cracked viewports and sparking control panels of their battered craft. "We crashed," he said, wincing as he sat up. "We need to get out of here." As if on cue, a warning klaxon blared to life, red lights flashing urgently. A computerized voice echoed through the pod. "Warning, hull integrity compromised. Atmosphere venting. Don emergency survival gear immediately." Vincent sprang into action, ignoring the protests of his bruised body. He yanked open a compartment, revealing 2 spacesuits. "Quick," he urged Estelle, tossing one to her. "We don't have much time." They scrambled into the suits, their fingers fumbling with unfamiliar clasps and seals. Vincent helped Estelle secure her helmet, his hands lingering for a moment on her shoulders. Their eyes met through the visors, a mix of fear and grit reflected in both gazes. Just as they finished suiting up, a loud crack resonated through the pod. A fissure appeared in the hull, widening rapidly. Vincent grabbed Estelle's hand and pulled her towards the emergency hatch. "Hold on tight," he warned, before hitting his fist against the release button. The hatch blew open with explosive force, catapulting them out onto the lunar surface. They tumbled across the dusty ground, the low gravity sending them bouncing like ragdolls. Finally, they came to a stop, the silent expanse of the moon stretching out around them. Vincent pushed himself to his feet, offering a hand to Estelle. She took it, her grip firm despite the bulky gloves. As they stood there, the reality of their situation sank in. They were stranded on a desolate moon, their only shelter a broken escape pod, with limited oxygen and no way to call for help. "What now?" Estelle asked, her voice tinny through the suit's comm system. Vincent scanned their surroundings, his military training kicking in. "First, we need to assess our resources. Then we find shelter and a way to signal for rescue." They returned to the pod, salvaging what they could. Vincent discovered the suit's built-in jetpacks, a feature that could prove invaluable in the low-gravity environment. As he explained their function to Estelle, he noticed her struggling with the unfamiliar technology. "Here," he said gently, moving behind her to adjust the controls on her back. "Like this." Estelle stiffened at first, unused to such close physical contact, but gradually relaxed as Vincent guided her through the jetpack's operation. As they worked, Vincent couldn't help but notice the graceful curve of her neck, visible even through the suit. With their immediate needs addressed, they turned their attention to their surroundings. In the distance, a structure rose above the lunar horizon, angular and alien in design. "Look," Vincent pointed, "that must be a Zorblaxian outpost. If we can reach it, we might find a way to contact our allies." Estelle nodded, her expression determined behind her visor. "Lead the way." They set off across the lunar landscape, their jetpacks allowing them to cover ground quickly. But the alien terrain posed its own challenges. Craters yawned before them like gaping maws, forcing them to navigate carefully. Sharp lunar rocks threatened to puncture their suits with every misstep. As they traveled, Vincent kept a close eye on Estelle. Her movements grew more labored, her breathing more rapid. Alarm shot through him as he realized her suit was malfunctioning. "Estelle," he called out, grabbing her arm to steady her. "Your oxygen recycler is failing. We need to share my supply." She looked at him, fear evident in her eyes. "How?" Vincent explained the risky procedure of alternating suit depressurization and repressurization. Estelle hesitated, her discomfort with physical closeness warring with her need for survival. "Trust me," Vincent said softly. "I won't let anything happen to you." Nodding, Estelle moved closer. Vincent carefully connected their suits, initiating the oxygen transfer. As the process began, their bodies pressed together, the intimate contact sending a jolt through both of them. Estelle's initial tension melted away as she felt the rush of fresh oxygen, replaced by a growing awareness of Vincent's solid presence. They continued their journey, stopping periodically to repeat the life-saving procedure. Each time, the physical proximity intensified the undeniable attraction between them. Estelle found herself lingering in Vincent's arms a moment longer than necessary, her earlier reservations about his alien physiology fading in the face of his unwavering support. As they neared the outpost, a new threat emerged. A Zorblaxian scout ship appeared on the horizon, its searchlights sweeping the lunar surface. Vincent pulled Estelle behind a large boulder, their bodies pressing close as they hid from the probing beams. "Don't move," Vincent whispered, his arm wrapped protectively around Estelle's waist. They remained frozen, hearts pounding as the ship passed overhead. The prolonged contact in such a tense situation only heightened the electricity between them. Estelle found herself acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched, her earlier fear of Vincent's alienness replaced by a deep sense of trust and something more. Once the danger passed, they made their final approach to the outpost. The airlock cycled open at their touch, revealing a pressurized interior. As the atmosphere normalized, they removed their helmets, facing each other directly for the first time since the crash. Relief and exhaustion overcame them. Without thinking, Vincent pulled Estelle into a tight embrace. She melted into his arms, her earlier hesitation forgotten. Their lips met in a passionate kiss, months of unspoken desire finally finding release. But their moment of intimacy was short-lived. A sudden hum filled the air as the outpost systems came to life. A holographic display flickered into existence, revealing a message that would change everything they thought they knew about the conflict. As they absorbed the shocking information about the Shadowers, Vincent and Estelle exchanged a look of mutual understanding. They had stumbled upon something far bigger than themselves, something that could alter the course of the war. With renewed purpose, they turned to the outpost's long-range communication device. As they worked to activate it, their bodies brushed against each other, the sexual tension between them now tempered by the weight of their discovery. Just as they prepared to transmit their message, a red light began flashing on the control panel. An alarm, silent but insistent, pulsed through the outpost systems. Vincent's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. "We've triggered some kind of alert," he said urgently. "We need to hurry." As they raced to complete their transmission, neither of them noticed the distant rumble of approaching Zorblaxian ships, drawn by the silent alarm. The true test of their newfound bond and their survival was just beginning. The true test of their newfound bond and their survival was just moments away. Vincent's fingers flew across the control panel, initiating the transmission sequence. The message about the Shadowers' manipulation began streaming out into space, carrying with it the potential to reshape the entire galactic conflict. But their victory was short-lived. A piercing alarm shattered the tense silence, red lights flashing urgently throughout the outpost. Vincent's heart sank as he realized the implications. "We've triggered some kind of alert system," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Estelle's eyes widened in alarm. "The Zorblaxians?" Before Vincent could respond, a harsh buzz filled the air, followed by an abrupt silence as the communication system went dead. "Jamming signal," he growled, smacking his head against the console in frustration. "We need to move. Now." They scrambled to don their spacesuits, the intimacy of their earlier moments forgotten in the face of imminent danger. As they sealed their helmets, Vincent caught a glimpse of commitment in Estelle's eyes, mirroring his own willpower. They burst out of the outpost's airlock, emerging onto the stark lunar landscape. The sight that greeted them sent a chill down Vincent's spine. A Zorblaxian dropship descended from the inky void of space, its searchlights sweeping across the cratered terrain. "Jetpacks," Vincent commanded, activating his own. "We need to put as much distance between us and that ship as possible." They launched themselves into the low lunar gravity, using the jetpacks to bound across the surface in long, arcing leaps. The silent vacuum of space swallowed the sound of their ragged breathing as they pushed their suits to the limit. Suddenly, Estelle's voice crackled through the comm system, tinged with panic. "Vincent, my jetpack! It's malfunctioning!" Vincent turned just in time to see Estelle spiraling out of control, her trajectory taking her dangerously close to a massive crater. Without hesitation, he adjusted his course, pushing his jetpack beyond its safety limits. Time seemed to slow as Vincent reached out, straining to grasp Estelle's flailing form. His fingers brushed against her suit once, twice, and then locked on. The force of the impact sent them both tumbling, the crater's edge looming before them. They hit the slope hard, rolling and bouncing down the steep incline. Vincent clung to Estelle, using his body to shield her from the worst of the impacts. They came to a stop at the bottom of the crater, their suits scraped and dented, but miraculously intact. As the dust settled, Vincent became acutely aware of Estelle's body pressed against his. The confined space of the small cavern they'd landed in left little room for movement, their limbs entangled in a way that sent a jolt of electricity through him, despite their dire circumstances. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice husky with concern and something more. Estelle nodded, her breath fogging her visor. "Yes, thanks to you." As they disentangled themselves, Vincent's hand brushed against a section of the cavern wall that seemed oddly smooth. He paused, running his gloved fingers along the surface. "Estelle, look at this. I don't think this is natural." Upon closer inspection, they discovered a narrow opening, barely visible in the dim light filtering down from above. With the sound of the Zorblaxian dropship growing louder, they made a split-second decision to explore the passage. The tunnel led them deeper into the moon's interior, twisting and turning in a way that suggested artificial design rather than natural formation. As they ventured further, a soft, pulsating light began to illuminate their path. "Vincent!" Estelle gasped, pointing to the source of the light. Strange, plant-like organisms lined the walls, emitting a gentle bioluminescence that responded to their presence. The tendrils seemed to reach out towards them, swaying in an unseen current. Estelle's voice took on a distant quality as she spoke. "I can sense them. They're aware. There's a consciousness here, unlike anything I've encountered before." They pressed on, the alien flora growing more abundant and varied as they progressed. The tunnel eventually opened into a vast chamber that took their breath away. Ancient technology, unlike anything human or betazoid, filled the space. At the center stood a pulsating energy core, its power thrumming through the air. "This must be precursor technology," Vincent breathed, his mind racing with the implications. "If we can activate it, we might be able to signal for help." As Vincent approached the central console, Estelle placed a hand on his arm. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I think it's trying to communicate with me." Her eyes glazed over, her body going rigid as visions flooded her mind. Vincent held her steady, watching in awe as the ancient systems came to life around them, responding to Estelle's telepathic connection. The activation triggered a series of events. A shimmering energy field enveloped the chamber and spread outward, its protective barrier extending through the tunnel network. But as the systems powered up, the environment within the chamber began to change. The temperature rose steadily and the air grew thin. "Our suits," Vincent realized with a start. "They're too damaged to withstand these conditions. We need to take them off." Their eyes met, a moment of understanding passing between them. With fumbling fingers, they helped each other out of the suits, their bodies brushing together in the confined space. The intimacy of the act, combined with the stress of their situation and the lingering effects of Estelle's visions, ignited the spark between them. Vincent pulled Estelle close, their lips meeting in a passionate kiss. For a moment, all thoughts of danger and duty faded away, leaving only the heat of their bodies and the intensity of their connection. Their embrace was interrupted by a sudden flare of light. A holographic message materialized in the center of the chamber, its alien script shifting and changing until it became comprehensible. The message spoke of a weapon, one capable of neutralizing the Shadower's influence across the galaxy. But activating it required something neither of them had anticipated, a unique fusion of human and betazoid DNA. As they absorbed the magnitude of this revelation, a new threat loomed. The chamber's systems detected a massive Zorblaxian warship entering lunar orbit, its presence a stark reminder of the danger they faced. Vincent and Estelle stood before the control panel, their hands intertwined. The choice before them was monumental: signal for rescue and escape their deteriorating environment, or attempt to activate the weapon and potentially save countless civilizations. The sexual tension between them reached its peak, intertwining with the fate of their respective species and the galaxy at large. As they gazed into each other's eyes, the weight of their decision hung in the air, along with the unspoken question of whether they were prepared to take the final step in bringing their species together. The Zorblaxian warship loomed ever closer, its presence a ticking clock, counting down to the moment when their choice would be made for them. Vincent took a deep breath, his thumb gently caressing Estelle's hand, as they stood poised on the precipice of a decision that would change everything. The course of history forever, with a shared nod of understanding, they made their choice. "We have to activate the weapon," Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The destiny of the universe depends on it." Estelle's grip on his hand tightened. "I know. But Vincent, are you sure you're ready for what that means?" He met her gaze, the intensity of his emotions visible in his eyes. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." As they began to remove their remaining clothing, the chamber's bioluminescent flora responded to their heightened emotions. The plant-like organisms pulsed with increasing brightness, bathing their bodies in a soft, ethereal glow. Vincent's hands trembled slightly as he helped Estelle out of her undergarments. The gravity of their decision, combined with the intimacy of the moment, sent waves of conflicting emotions through him. As the last of their clothing fell away, they stood before each other, vulnerable and exposed. Estelle reached out, tracing the contours of Vincent's face with her fingertips. "I never imagined my first time with a human would be like this," she said, a hint of nervous laughter in her voice. Vincent pulled her close, their bodies pressed together in the cool air of the chamber. "I never imagined my first time with anyone would be to defend the galaxy," he replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. Their lips met in a deep, passionate kiss. As they embraced, the ancient technology around them hummed to life, responding to their presence. The central console began to glow, its surface rippling like liquid metal. Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. Dust and small debris rained down from the ceiling as a distant boom echoed through the structure. "The Zorblaxian warship," Vincent said, breaking away from the kiss. "They've started their bombardment." With renewed urgency, they made their way to the glowing console. Vincent lifted Estelle onto its smooth surface, their eyes locked in a moment of shared commitment and desire. As they joined together, the precursor weapon began to power up, drawing energy from their union. The experience was unlike anything either of them had ever felt before. Pleasure mingled with pain as the ancient device tapped into their life forces. Visions flooded their minds, glimpses of the Shadower's manipulation throughout history, the countless civilizations they had pitted against each other. Vincent saw the early days of human space exploration, the subtle influences that had pushed them towards conflict with the Betazoids. Estelle witnessed her own people's history rewritten before her eyes, the truth of their past laid bare. As their shared climax approached, the energy buildup in the chamber reached a fever pitch. The bioluminescent flora writhed and pulsed, casting frantic shadows across the walls. The console beneath them grew almost unbearably hot, yet neither Vincent nor Estelle could bring themselves to break their connection. With a final shared cry of ecstasy and agony, they reached their peak. In that instant, the precursor weapon unleashed its power. A massive pulse of energy erupted from the lunar base, expanding outward at impossible speeds. Vincent and Estelle collapsed against each other, their bodies slick with sweat and trembling from the intensity of the experience. Through the haze of their shared vision, they watched as the energy pulse swept across the solar system and beyond. The effect on the Zorblaxian warship was immediate. The relentless bombardment ceased as the pulse passed through the vessel. In their mind's eye, Vincent and Estelle could see the confusion spreading among the crew as the Shadower's influence was suddenly stripped away. As the last ripples of the energy pulse faded, Vincent and Estelle found themselves changed. A new awareness blossomed between them, a mental link that allowed them to share thoughts and emotions without speaking. "Did it work?" Estelle's voice echoed in Vincent's mind. Before he could respond, the chamber around them sprung to life. Holographic displays materialized, showing system readings from across the galaxy. On countless worlds, including Earth and Betazoid, individuals were awakening from the Shadower's control. Their moment of triumph was short-lived. A violent tremor shook the chamber, nearly throwing them from the console. Warning klaxons blared as the holographic displays shifted to show the status of the lunar base. "The weapon's discharge," Vincent realized aloud. "It's destabilized the moon's core. This whole complex is going to tear itself apart." As if in response to his words, a section of the ceiling collapsed, narrowly missing them. Estelle leapt from the console, pulling Vincent with her. "We need to find a way out of here," she said, her eyes scanning the chamber for an exit. Vincent's gaze fell on one of the holographic displays. "There," he pointed. "The base has a hangar bay with functional spacecraft. If we can reach it—" They scrambled to retrieve their discarded clothing, dressing hastily as the chamber continued to shake around them. Just as they finished, a new tremor rocked the base, more violent than any before. A massive fissure opened in the floor, separating them from the tunnel they had entered through. "This way!" Estelle called, gesturing towards a previously hidden passage that had been revealed by the shifting walls. They plunged into the unknown corridor, the sounds of the collapsing base echoing behind them. As they raced through the twisting tunnels, guided by the faint glow of the bioluminescent flora, Vincent and Estelle became aware of other presences nearby. Through their newfound mental link, they sensed confusion, fear, and a desperate need for help. Rounding a corner, they came face to face with a group of disoriented Zorblaxian soldiers. The aliens recoiled at the sight of them, raising their weapons instinctively, but the usual hatred and aggression were absent from their eyes, replaced by uncertainty and fear. Vincent and Estelle exchanged a quick glance, their thoughts aligned through their mental connection. They had a choice to make: leave these former enemies to their fate, or risk their own lives to save them. Without hesitation, Estelle stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We can help you," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "But we need to move now. This entire base is about to collapse." The Zorblaxians hesitated, their ingrained suspicions warring with their newfound clarity. Another violent tremor shook the tunnel, sending cracks spiderwebbing across the ceiling. In that moment of shared danger, the decision was made. "Follow us," Vincent commanded, taking the lead. "We know the way to a hangar bay." As the unlikely group raced through the crumbling complex, the true scale of the moon's destabilization became apparent. Entire sections of the base were collapsing, ancient technology sparking and failing as the structure tore itself apart. They reached the hangar bay just as the tunnel behind them caved in. Before them stood a collection of sleek, otherworldly vessels, the legacy of the long-vanished precursors. Vincent's eyes scanned the ships, his pilot's instincts kicking in. "That one," he said, pointing to a craft near the center of the hangar. "It looks like it's designed for atmospheric and spaceflight. It's our best bet." As they hurried toward the ship, the hangar bay's massive doors began to groan and buckle. The void of space was visible through the widening gaps, the airless lunar surface beyond. Vincent reached the ship first, his hands flying over the unfamiliar controls. To his amazement, the vessel responded to his touch, systems coming online as if they had been waiting for this moment. "Everyone in, now!" he shouted as the ship's entry ramp descended. Estelle ushered the Zorblaxians aboard, counting heads as they passed. As the last alien entered the craft, she turned to see a massive section of the hangar ceiling give way. She leapt for the entry ramp, Vincent's hand reaching out to pull her to safety as the ship's doors sealed behind her. With a thought more than a physical action, Vincent brought the ship's engines to life. The ancient craft rose from the hangar floor just as the bay doors finally failed, the vacuum of space howling into the chamber. Vincent's hands danced across the controls, his mind working in perfect sync with the ship's systems. They shot out of the disintegrating hangar, emerging into the star-filled blackness of space. As they pulled away from the moon, the full extent of the destruction became clear. Massive fissures crisscrossed the lunar surface, the precursor base sinking into newly formed chasms as the satellite tore itself apart. In orbit above them, the Zorblaxian warship hung motionless, its crew still reeling from their sudden freedom from the Shadowers' control. Vincent angled their ship away from the potential threat, setting a course for the Betazoid homeworld. As they left lunar orbit, Estelle gasped, her hand grasping Vincent's arm. Through the ship's view screen, they watched as a massive shape began to materialize in orbit around the distant Betazoid planet. "What is that?" one of the Zorblaxian soldiers asked, fear evident in his voice. Vincent and Estelle shared a look of grim understanding. The true face of their enemy was finally revealing itself. "That," Vincent said, his voice tight, "is a Shadower mothership, and it looks like it's preparing for one last desperate attack." As they sped towards the Betazoid homeworld, the newly forged alliance of humans, Betazoids, and Zorblaxians faced the realization that their victory had been incomplete. The final battle against the Shadowers was about to begin, and the future of the cosmos hung in the balance. The Shadower mothership loomed before them, its massive form eclipsing the stars as they approached the Betazoid homeworld. Vincent's hands tightened on the controls of the precursor ship, his mind racing as he assessed their options. "That thing's charging up," he said, his voice tight with tension. "We need to stop it before it fires on the planet." Estelle leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the ship's unfamiliar display. "Vincent, look at this," she said, gesturing to a pulsing icon on the screen. I think this ship has a weapon powerful enough to take on that mothership." As if responding to her thoughts, the ship's systems flared to life, holographic displays materializing around them. The Zorblaxian soldiers murmured in awe, their earlier fear giving way to curiosity. "But how do we activate it?" Vincent asked, his eyes darting between the displays and the approaching shadower vessel. Estelle's expression grew distant as she communed with the ship's systems. "It requires a mental link," she said softly. "Like what we experienced on the moon, but stronger, more focused." Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. Without a word, Vincent engaged the ship's autopilot and stood from his seat. One of the Zorblaxians, a soldier with distinctive facial markings, stepped forward. "I am Kraz," he said, his voice gruff but determined. "We will man the ship's other systems. You two focus on the weapon." Vincent nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Kraz. The controls are similar to your own ships. You should be able to figure them out quickly." As Kraz and his fellow Zorblaxians took their positions, Vincent and Estelle made their way to a small, circular chamber near the heart of the ship. The door sealed behind them with a soft hiss, and bioluminescent patterns flickered to life along the walls. "This is it," Estelle said, her fingers tracing the intricate designs. "This chamber is designed for mental interfacing." They faced each other, the gravity of the moment hanging heavy between them. Vincent reached out, his hands gently cupping Estelle's face. "Are you ready for this?" he asked softly. In response, Estelle leaned in and kissed him deeply. As their lips met, the chamber hummed to life around them. They broke apart just long enough to remove their clothing, their skin tingling as it made contact with the cool metallic floor. As they embraced once more, their minds began to merge. Memories flashed between them. Their first meeting on the Betazoid homeworld, the tension and attraction that had grown during their mission, the intensity of their connection in the lunar base. The ship shuddered around them as it engaged the first wave of shadower drones. Through their mental link, they could sense Kraz and the other Zorblaxians working in unison, their newfound alliance forged in the heat of battle. Vincent and Estelle's connection deepened, their individual consciousness bleeding into one another until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. They were no longer simply human and Betazoid. They had become something new, something greater than the sum of their parts. Their shared mind expanded, interfacing with the ship's systems. They felt the vessel respond, its hull reconfiguring to better withstand the onslaught of shadower weapons. Energy coursed through the ship's circuits, charging the ancient weapon to levels it had never before achieved. As they neared the shadower mothership, time seemed to slow. In their merged state, Vincent and Estelle could see the energy building within the enormous vessel, preparing to unleash destruction upon the Betazoid homeworld. With a shared thought, they activated the precursor weapon. A beam of pure energy, more brilliant than a newborn star, lanced out from their ship. It struck the shadower mothership with pinpoint accuracy, cutting through its defenses like they were tissue paper. The mothership's hull buckled and tore, secondary explosions rippling across its surface. But even as it died, the shadower vessel unleashed its final attack, a pulse of dark energy that radiated outward, threatening to corrupt and destroy all technology in its path. Vincent and Estelle felt the pulse wash over their ship, interfering with its systems and threatening to sever their mental link. In desperation, they pushed their connection even further, their consciousness expanding until it merged with the very essence of the precursor vessel. In that moment of perfect union, they understood. The ship possessed the ability to generate a protective field, one that could shield not just themselves, but the entire Betazoid homeworld. Moving as one, Vincent and Estelle directed the ship's remaining energy into creating an enormous protective bubble. It expanded rapidly, enveloping the planet just as the shadower pulse reached them. The dark energy dissipated harmlessly against the shield, its destructive potential nullified. As the immediate danger passed, Vincent and Estelle's mental link began to fade. They found themselves back in the interfacing chamber, physically and emotionally drained, yet filled with a sense of profound connection. "We did it," Estelle whispered, her voice hoarse. Vincent nodded, pulling her close. "We did, but I think our troubles aren't over yet." As if to confirm his words, the ship shuddered violently. The strain of the battle and the massive energy expenditure had taken its toll on the ancient vessel. Warning klaxons blared as they began an uncontrolled descent towards the Betazoid capital. Vincent staggered to his feet, helping Estelle up. They dressed quickly and made their way back to the bridge, where Kraz and the other Zorblaxians were struggling with the failing controls. "Brace for impact!" Vincent called out as he slid into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls in a desperate attempt to stabilize their descent. The ship plummeted through the planet's atmosphere, leaving a fiery trail in its wake. On the surface below, Betazoids and humans alike watched in awe and fear as the unknown vessel hurtled towards them, the remnants of the shadower mothership burning up in the sky above. As the ground rushed up to meet them, Vincent managed to level their descent slightly, aiming for an open area on the outskirts of the capital city. Estelle gripped his shoulder tightly, her mind linked with his, lending him strength and support. "Hold on, everyone!" Vincent shouted as the ship skimmed the tops of the trees. The Zorblaxians braced themselves, their expressions a mix of fear and tenacity. With a deafening roar, the precursor ship struck the ground, carving a deep furrow in the earth as it skidded to a halt. Inside, its passengers were thrown about violently, the ancient vessel's systems failing one by one as it finally came to rest. In the sudden silence that followed, broken only by the crackle of small fires and the groan of stressed metal, Vincent turned to Estelle. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before she could respond, the ship's emergency hatch blew open with a hiss of escaping air. Daylight streamed into the smoke-filled interior, and with it came the sound of approaching vehicles and shouting voices. As Vincent and Estelle helped the Zorblaxians to their feet, they realized that their journey was just getting started. They had saved the Betazoid homeworld, but now they faced a new challenge, explaining their unlikely alliance and the incredible events that had transpired to a world that had been on the brink of war just hours before. Together, supporting each other and their Zorblaxian companions, they made their way towards the open hatch and the uncertain future that awaited them outside. The impact sent shock waves through the ship's frame, rattling the occupants as they struggled to stay upright. Vincent's hands flew over the controls, his muscles straining as he fought to keep the vessel from breaking apart. Beside him, Estelle's eyes closed in concentration, her mind reaching out to interface with the ship's failing systems. Their mental connection, forged in the heat of battle, flared to life once more. Vincent felt Estelle's presence in his mind, guiding his movements with an intuitive understanding of the precursor technology. Together, they managed to level out the descent, the ship's nose lifting just enough to avoid a catastrophic nosedive. "There!" Estelle shouted, her eyes snapping open. "The Central Plaza!" Vincent saw it too, a large open space in the heart of the Betazoid capital, their best hope for a survivable landing. He angled the ship towards it, gritting his teeth as buildings whipped past at alarming speeds. The precursor vessel struck the ground with a deafening screech of metal, skidding across the plaza's polished surface. Sparks flew as it carved a deep furrow in its wake, debris scattering in all directions. When the ship finally ground to a halt, an eerie silence fell over the crash site. Vincent turned to Estelle, his heart pounding. "You okay?" She nodded, a thin trickle of blood running from her temple. "I think so. The others?" They looked back to see Kraz helping his fellow Zorblaxians to their feet. The aliens looked battered but alive, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. "We need to get out," Vincent said, punching the emergency release for the main hatch. With a hiss of escaping air, the hatch swung open, flooding the ship's interior with bright sunlight. Vincent and Estelle stumbled out, supporting each other as they took in their surroundings. A crowd had already begun to gather, a sea of shocked faces staring at the wreckage. Humans and Betazoids alike stood frozen, their eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. Among them, Vincent spotted the distinctive robes of the Betazoid High Council and the crisp uniforms of Earth's diplomatic corps. As Kraz and the other Zorblaxians emerged from the ship, a tense silence fell over the plaza. Vincent felt Estelle stiffen beside him, sensing the potential for violence in the air. But then, something unexpected happened. A cheer erupted from the crowd, starting as a low rumble and quickly swelling to a thunderous roar. The people had witnessed the defeat of the Shadower mothership from the planet's surface, and now they were hailing their saviors. Through the crowd, a distinguished Betazoid man pushed his way forward, his eyes fixed on Estelle. Vincent recognized him from the diplomatic briefings, Estelle's father, a member of the High Council. "Estelle!" he called out, rushing towards them with arms outstretched. Estelle tensed for a moment, then relaxed into her father's embrace. When they parted, her father's gaze fell on Vincent, noticing the intimate way the human and his daughter held each other. To Vincent's surprise, the councilman extended his hand in a human-style handshake. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for bringing my daughter home." As Vincent shook the councilman's hand, he saw Kraz approaching cautiously, his fellow Zorblaxians close behind. The crowd's cheers died down, replaced by confused murmurs at the sight of the former enemies. Vincent stepped forward, his voice carrying across the plaza. "These Zorblaxians fought alongside us," he announced. "They were victims of the Shadowers, just as we were. They helped us save your world." The Betazoid Council members exchanged glances, their telepathic abilities probing the minds of the Zorblaxian survivors. After a moment, the lead councilwoman stepped forward. "We sense the truth in your words," she said, her voice ringing out clearly. "And we see in these Zorblaxians a genuine desire for peace." She turned to address the crowd. "Let it be known that on this day, we offer asylum to those who were once our enemies. Let this be the first step towards a new era of understanding and cooperation." As medical teams rushed forward to tend to the injured, Vincent and Estelle found themselves ushered towards a hastily prepared podium. The crowd's attention focused on them, hungry for answers. Vincent looked at Estelle, saw the perseverance in her eyes, and knew they were ready for this moment. Together, they began to recount their incredible journey, from their first cultural misunderstandings to their merging of minds in the precursor base. As they spoke, Vincent could feel the crowd's mood shifting. The story of their unlikely partnership captivated the audience, breaking down barriers between species with each word. When they finished, the Betazoid High Council convened briefly before making a stunning announcement. Not only would they accept Earth's admission to the Galactic Federation, but they proposed a new initiative, an interspecies cultural exchange program. The crowd erupted in cheers once more, the plaza filled with the sounds of celebration. In the midst of it all, Vincent turned to Estelle, saw the love shining in her eyes, and knew that their journey was just the beginning. As they embraced, sealing their bond with a kiss that defied old taboos, Vincent realized that they had not just saved a world, they had helped birth a new future for all species.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.